Iris Heselton, in the 2003 edition of the Friendship Book of Francis Gay, wrote, and I quote, "They say that life's a highway, a journey through the years, with milestones made of memories and sometimes washed with tears. And now and then a toll gate demands a higher price, but look ahead, a better view will beckon and entice. A rough road and a steep road, this highway we must take, with many signposts on the way, decisions we must make. But as we travel onward, there's beauty all the while, and love to spread a golden glow and brighten every mile." Hello once again, I'm Don Jackson, this time on a long highway trip, accompanied by the heartbeat of the internet. If you're a fan of old black and white movies, then you might remember seeing or hearing about the road movies with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. Many of the classic movies of the 40s and 50s dealt with life on the road. In recent memory, movies like Easy Rider and Thelma and Louise, to a certain degree, glamorized life on the road for a rebellious younger generation. It doesn't matter whether you travel the highway in a one-bedroom RV bus with shower, kitchen, and living room, a packed SUV, a compact car, or only stand on the shoulder of a ramp waiting for a ride. It's the same spirit of adventure that has lured students to travel the world before going to university or heading out into the working world. Europe has been a mecca for these sightseeing wanderers. They would hitchhike at the side of the road by day and stay in hostels overnight. Sometimes they took the road as an escape from a bad love affair, or to take time out from a relationship in order to clear the mind, to make the decision to end it or go forward. The road can either symbolize the beginning of a new journey or the end of an old one. Here's something to keep in mind if you're feeling nostalgic about hitchhikers that you see on the side of the road. The results of a survey throw caution on the decision to pick up hitchhikers. 84% of those with their thumbs out had criminal records. Have you ever wondered where the center of all things is? In an excerpt from a novel called The Center of Everything by Laura Moriarty, in it the main character Evelyn says, and I quote, "I like living in Kansas, not just because of the wheat, but because it's right in the center. If you look at a map of the world, the United States is usually right in the middle, and Kansas is in the middle of that. So right here, where we are, maybe this very stretch of highway we are driving on is the exact center of the whole world, what everything else spirals out from." End quote. And on a related note was this excerpt from the preface to The Blue Highways by William Least Heat Moon, also known as William Lewis Trogdon. And I quote, "On the old highway maps of America, the main routes were red and the back roads were blue. Now, even the colors are changing. But in those brevities, just before dawn and a little after dark, times neither day nor night, the old roads return to the sky some of its color. Then, in truth, they cast a mysterious shadow of blue. And it's that time when the pull of the blue highway is strongest, when the open road is beckoning, a strangeness, a place where a man can lose himself." The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now, far ahead, the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet. And whither then? I cannot say. The words of J.R.R. Tolkien. It was one of the great road journeys of all, the trek to return the ring to the fires that forged it in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Think of the adventures the ragtag fellowship met along the way, and of course they ended up finding something even more important than a ring: fellowship and friendship. It's the contemporary version of the road movies we saw in black and white. Lessons we all have to learn ourselves on our road of life. The road goes ever on and on, out from the door where it began. Now, far ahead, the road is gone. Let others follow it who can. Let them a journey now begin, but I at last with weary feet will turn towards the lighted inn, my evening rest and sleep to meet. Truck drivers and salesmen who drive for hours on end are familiar with the term highway hypnosis. I was a victim of it many years ago. While living in Montreal, I needed to return to my hometown to sign the papers to sell my house. It had to be done right away, and I had a very small window of opportunity in which to get it done. In 12 hours, I needed to be back in Montreal to do my Saturday morning show. I drove for almost 5 hours nonstop. I signed the papers when I arrived, had a very brief nap, and then was on the road back for a 5-hour return journey. I was nodding off during the long drive back, but I managed to keep my mind on the road for the most part. Just outside of Cornwall, I started to lose track of time and the miles I had traveled, a sure sign of reacting to the endless monotony of a long drive. Your mind is capable of processing a few things at the same time, so while I daydreamed, I was able to steer the car. Now, it's a scary prospect and not something to be proud of, but I will bet that even on short drives, your mind has sometimes wandered and you forgot bits and pieces of your drive. My hypnosis, though, eventually led to deep sleep. I started weaving all over the road and was steering myself into the ditch. It would have sent me down an embankment and into a tree. That's when my angel arrived. I woke to the sound of an air horn blasting at me and blinding high beams directly through my rear window. A transport driver saw that I was losing control and did what he could to keep me from being in an accident. I swerved and got back onto the road. From that point until we parted ways in Montreal, we played cat and mouse. We kept each other awake during the last leg of a very tedious journey. I am forever grateful for that driver that night. He probably saved my life. You have to be careful while under the influence of highway hypnosis. For the most part, while we're daydreaming, something inside the mind keeps our attention on the road, even if we can't remember the past few miles. And thank goodness it does. Otherwise, there would be a lot more accidents on the road. But don't rely on the mind to watch you driving. It just may decide to follow you on your daydream. Alfred Edward Houseman wrote, "That is the land of lost content. I see it shining plain. The happy highways where I went and cannot come again. Look for me by moonlight. Watch for me by moonlight. I'll come to thee by moonlight, though hell should bar the way." An excerpt from The Highwayman by Alfred Noyes. Traffic reporters for radio stations have known that drivers will slow down to look at an accident. Trying to get them moving again is like talking to a brick wall. There is something in our makeup, that compels us to see for ourselves the often tragic results of a car crash. Recently, movie maker David Cronenberg took this morbid fascination to a different level with his film Crash, based on the novel by J.G. Ballard. He added a sexual element, and those same people who will always slow to see an accident lined up to see the film, and some of them probably came away with ideas. And that's a scary prospect for anyone who just tries to survive out on the highways and city streets every day. Let's add one more thing to the blend. There is a lot of rage out on the roads today, and probably for a lot of different reasons. Our high-stress lifestyle, construction that seems an ever-present fact of life, roads that weren't designed to handle an increasing number of cars and trucks, and subsequently, short fuses and fiery tempers. I used to fly in a jet helicopter with a traffic reporter some years back on a fairly regular basis, and it was frightening to observe all this from the air. Red light running, racing, hit and runs, cutting in front of other drivers, causing brakes to squeal, and leaving behind a trail of burnt rubber. We're not dealing with this rage very well either. People are making obscene gestures at each other, which only serves to make a bad situation worse. Some have even gotten out of their cars to vent their rage, and fisticuffs ensue. Road rage seems to be all the rage today, and we haven't even brought up the subject of drunk drivers yet. Because of the late hour I used to be out on the roads going home from my radio show at night, you'd be surprised how many times I've come close to being wiped out by a car full of drunks, or an older driver who can no longer see straight. We worry about trucks with their wheels flying off. It still happens. I've been hit by tire debris on the highway. It made a mess out of my car's front end. We still have to worry about some drivers falling asleep from too many loads and too little sleep. Some cab drivers vying for the same fares, swerving in and out of traffic. And speed limits? What a joke. There are no speed limits anymore, because the car makers keep building more powerful engines, and some of the buyers of these racing machines are pushing them to the max on highways and city streets. Street racing? Catch me if you can, I think, is the call from a young, usually male, generation of drivers. Just the other night, I woke a little after 2 a.m. Some young man was speeding down our street with his speakers pounding a beat. His head was out the driver's side window, and he was howling like a wolf. He passed by 3 times. Then there's the whole issue of drivers and cyclists. Drivers arguing on cell phones or at their passengers, and the kids asking over and over, "Are we there yet?" And while you're answering no, gas prices just went up again. All the while, the rage is getting worse. Our insurance premiums are beginning to show the strain of having to deal with all this. In the States, road ragers take it to the ultimate extreme. Some carry guns with them that are hidden from sight. It's scary. The situation on our roads just gets worse, and it's usually the innocent who pay the price in accidents. Now, that all said, we love our car chases in the movies. Even with all the high-tech special effects in science fiction films, movies like Fast and Furious still do well at the box office. Who will ever forget the classic chase scene in the film, The French Connection? Gene Hackman driving in and out of traffic in the city under the elevated train. That is one of the all-time best. But if you push a baby carriage, stay out of his way. Consider Steve McQueen, Robert Vaughn, and Jacqueline Bisset in one of the movie's most famous car chases. The film was called Bullet. A lot of movie love affairs either took off, were cemented, or fell apart during road trips. Steve McQueen and Ali McGraw gave this an even more contemporary feel when they starred in The Getaway. That film was recently remade starring real-life husband and wife team at the time, Kim Basinger and Alec Baldwin, and they upped the violence a notch. There was Thelma and Louise on their spur-of-the-moment crime spree, and a climactic ending to it all. On a comedic note, though, you might want to remember Steve Martin and John Candy in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. But these road relationships have taken a turn for the worse. Today, we're seeing films about relationships between drifters and drivers that are heavy with gratuitous violence and sex, but very little romance. Films like Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers is nothing more than a vehicle for violence. They show us just how dangerous our highways have become and how some relationships, in and of themselves, are an accident waiting to happen. If only roads could talk. Can you imagine the stories they would have to tell? They'd speak of lives that began and also came to an end along their winding route from one end of this country to another. How many babies have taken their first breath by the side of the road, I can't say for sure, but the statistics are well known for the ones who have lost their lives between the white lines or off to the side in a ditch. If a highway could speak, it would tell us of high-speed chases, gentle Sunday drives, miles upon miles of backlogged traffic trying to get into and out of congested cities, and to higher ground away from raging storms. If you used your imagination, you could imagine that highways have worn many mischievous smiles as they coaxed drivers along their winding routes and through the shimmering summer heat. They just might have conspired with the blazing sun to create mirages to play tricks on more than one unsuspecting driver's eyes. If highways could speak, they might share a few laughs about the way their slick snow and ice-covered stretches in winter test the skills and the nerves of other drivers. Some of their famous brethren, like the infamous Route 66 and I-95, have had their stories made into movies and TV shows, but I really think the highway just doesn't care about fame. That said, if it were to have any feeling whatsoever, it might shed a tear when large stretches of its surface are renamed the Highway of Heroes, the last drive a soldier killed in action overseas will ever make again. Highways are the lifelines that carry goods to market and a fast way for people to go to work, except during rush hour, when you can almost hear a highway snickering over the sound of idling engines. They might also find it funny the way some people drive. You always see drivers eating, talking into Bluetooth headsets, fiddling with the radio dial or the GPS. Some steer with their knees in order to put on makeup. Others, I've heard, like to play the steering wheel with drumsticks. If that isn't enough, others will drive not looking out the windshield in front, but staring down at their laps. If anything distracts a driver more than text messaging, I'd love to hear about it. Even though police have measures in place to ticket distracted drivers in some parts of the world, it hasn't stopped the practice of texting and driving. Recently, my son was almost hit by a car driven by someone who ran a red light while texting. And to be honest, I really don't think the highway cares if a driver engrossed in sending and receiving text messages adds one more to its tragic statistics. Have a great day, a safe drive, and sweet dreams once the journey is over. I'm Don Jackson.